Hello and welcome to the Business Talk podcast. I am your host Deepak. Today we are privileged to welcome two remarkable guests to our episode. Joining us are Professor Robert Wolcott, and renowned academic and thought leader celebrated for his expertise in innovation and strategic management, and Kaihan Krippendorff, a distinguished strategist and author known for his profound insights into competitive dynamics and strategic foresight. We are excited to dive into their valuable perspectives and explore the groundbreaking ideas they bring to the table. In this episode, Professor Wolcott and Krippendorff will dwell into the concept of proximity and its transformative impact on various aspects of modern life. Professor Robert and Kaihan, it's a true delight to have you on this podcast. We are delighted and honored to have you with us today.
Great
Thank
to
you.
be here. Thanks, Deepak.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. So, my first question to Professor Robert. Can you describe the origin of this book and how Kaihan, a distinguished strategist with a deep understanding of competitive dynamics and strategic foresight, became involved in the project?
Great. Well, thanks for that, Deepak. And I'm eager to engage with you and your audience. So let me start with the punchline, and then I'll back up to the origin story. So proximity observes that the fundamental difference between digital technologies of all sorts and industrial age technologies. And when you look at the fundamental difference between the two, the future becomes much more clear. And what is digital compels the production and provision of value ever closer to the moment of actual demand in time and space. So that's the punchline of proximity. And what Kaihan and I are not saying is a little better supply chain management or just responding faster to customers. That's all great. But what we're really saying is setting up business models and technology platforms to procrastinate until the last possible moment and then produce and provide exactly what that individual customer needs in that moment. And that's where every industry is going the rest of our careers. But on your point about the origin of this, it was very simple. I was at a tech conference in 2014, and Deepak, I'm sure you've been to a lot of tech conferences. After a while, you notice that every speaker kind of sounds the same. And I thought, we must be able to do better than this. We need better foresight. We can't see the future in detail, but we can see the contours of the future. And so I remembered from my study of economics years ago that there's something in economics called the general purpose tool. Now, it's a coincidence that that's GPT. It has nothing to do with ChatGPT. But the general purpose tool is a technology that is so fundamental, so pervasive in its impact in the economy, that if you understand how it works compared to the past, you can see the future. So a simple example of this would be steam engine as opposed to the electric dynamo. They operate differently. They have different characteristics, different requirements, different capabilities. And so if you saw that difference, you could actually predict a lot about the future. And so what Kaihan and I have done with this concept of proximity is observe that the fundamental difference between digital technologies and the industrial age is that digital technologies allow us to compress capabilities in smaller and smaller packages and distribute them all over the economy, ever closer to each moment in time and space. And that is completely different than building an industrial age factory or building a railroad. These operate completely differently. And so therefore, when you recognize this, you see that digital is compelling value creation ever closer to the moment of demand. And you know what, I'll actually let Kaihan share how he got involved in the project. There was a moment in time in the middle of the COVID pandemic where we were together in a session that he was hosting and light bulbs went off and we said, hey, let's do this thing together. Kaihan, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, we were doing a series of webinars, COVID hit, and suddenly there was this opportunity because we had these amazing speakers that were available, not flying and not traveling. And so we ran this summit. It was 24 hours, 24 speakers, and really, the best of the best thinkers from strategy and innovation. And Rob was one of our featured speakers. And we had someone working with also that was really good with data analytics and visualization. And he would track the frequency with which certain words were spoken and when people logged on and logged off. And Rob's concept of proximity was by far the most mentioned term, more so than blue ocean, more so than psychological safety, right? And so we said, this must be really resonating. It really speaks to people and clarifies a lot of complex, seemingly unrelated things into one concept. So when I had an opportunity to help Rob package it and get it out in the form of a book into the world, I jumped at that chance.
And by the way, Deepak, to give credit where credit's due, Kaihan and I have Jill Hellman, our good friend Jill Hellman, to thanks originally for the introduction years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Very interestful connection, I can say. Professor Robert, could you start by explaining what you mean by proximity in the context of just-in-time innovations?
Right. So just-in-time is a way to try and help you get your head around what we mean by proximity. It might actually be a little misleading because sometimes when people see just-in-time, they think, oh, it's about manufacturing. I already know that. But that's exactly not what we're doing. Just-in-time manufacturing, going back to the 80s and 90s, the fact that we didn't do more than that at the time wasn't because we didn't want to, it's because we couldn't. We didn't have the technology to do much more than just making sure we had the right parts in the factory at the right time to satisfy our requirements. We're actually taking this orders of magnitude beyond. So this is the 21st century version of just-in-time, meaning that you can create technology and business model platforms that wait and do as little as possible until there's an actual customer ready for a product, a service, or an experience. So proximity applies to physical products, to digital products, to experiences, to everything. And in fact, Deepak, it's the most powerful, it's the most potent with fully digital offerings, because in many ways, they're already entirely proximate. So I'll give you an example, video streaming. So already today with Netflix, YouTube, Disney Plus, pick your platform, you can watch any video you want anywhere, anytime, on any device. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily good. I mean, you could spend your whole day watching the Kardashians, but whatever floats your boat. But the point is that the provision of video content is already proximate. Anywhere, anything, anywhere, anytime, as we like to say. But the production of most video content is not yet proximate as it could be. So most of the video content was probably produced months ago, maybe even decades ago. But where are we right now with generative AI? If you look at platforms like Sora, we're at the knee of the curve. We're at the very beginning of the ability to produce video content customized to each individual situation, each individual user at a moment's notice. And so if that brief couple-minute nice video that's made up on the fly by Sora today is that clunky, imagine where it might be in 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. And this is as we trend. This is why we say proximity predicts where industries are going. We know this is going to happen. It's not oh, I wonder if one day. No, this is going to happen. Now, I don't know who's going to win, but you can get ahead of it now because you see it coming.
Yeah. Kaihan, how do these breakthroughs in just-in-time technology differ from previous innovations we have seen in the business world?
Yeah, I think, and Rob started alluding to this, if we look at the dominant companies of our era, right, they enabled you to search for things that were already made. So Google comes to dominate through searching for information. Amazon comes to dominate in the United States, at least, by helping you search for products. But in both of those cases, those are things that were already created. You're searching for things that are already created. But what Rob is pointing out here is your inquiry is now causing the creation of. Now, video takes more time to create on demand, but audio is more, you can create audio more quickly. So I use ChatGPT, the audio version of that large language model, to just talk to it instead of listening to some podcasts, although I listen to your podcast. I create the podcast, I ask questions, and it responds, and the content is being assembled for me at that moment on demand. Now you can start getting a glimpse at what this looks like when video jumps in, because you can look at, say, TikTok, right? In TikTok, you are getting content that is already created, but you're getting it in smaller packages, so small 1 minutes. And the experience you're getting is almost like, Legos, right? You can give me a box of Legos, and I can use that box to create lots of different things. So I take these little packages and I put them in 1 minute increments, and I create a video experience that is more customized. Now, when those Legos are actually created from my inquiry, then we start moving into true proximate content creation. And what is really interesting is we're now seeing those capabilities also making personalization at scale economically feasible in the physical world. We talk about the cost of customization is coming down thanks to 3D printing and automation, and the personalization premium is going up. So people are willing to pay more, and it's costing less to produce. We are reaching an inflection point where vast swaths of the economy will cross over from search to creation.
Yeah. Professor Robert, in what ways are these technological breakthroughs influencing societal structures and daily life?
Oh, social structures in daily life. Well, we've actually been in the midst of this transformation for a while, whether we recognize it or not. Kaihan just mentioned an example. Who could have imagined even 3 years ago that you could stand there and have a conversation with an AI system that's constantly pulling on different sources to respond to your question, and doing so fairly effectively? I mean, are there issues with it? Of course there are. But beings don't have problems. So, we work through those, hopefully. So that's one thing. But on a higher, maybe more philosophical level, changing how we communicate changes how we congregate. So one thread of evolution going on right now that's quite profound, we've all been in the midst of it, is the shift from mass media to social media. And there've been lots of people making comments about how we're fracturing, how we're atomizing, we're becoming, in our own little echo chambers. We've all talked about this, but that has fundamentally to do with the proximate nature of social media platforms. So just to illustrate this, if your listeners happen to be old enough to remember the age before email, I know that was sometime in the last century, but I'm that old. So in the age before email, if you wanted to have regular communication, engage with people overseas, you had to write a letter or you had to use a phone. And typically it was so expensive to make international phone calls, you'd wait until after 9 p.m. to make the call because it was cheaper. It was not trivial. Today it's trivial. And so people from anywhere in the world, for the most part, can stay in touch with, engage on a regular basis with other people from anywhere in the world, for the most part. And so that changes our configurations. And that is an expression of proximity. Because, I mean, Deepak, you're pretty far away from us right now. And Kaihan and I are both here in the United States, but he's in Miami, I'm in New Jersey. And yet here we are interacting on a screen. Now, we're all like, oh yeah, I've been there, done that. But, 5 years ago, this wasn't a normal thing. Before COVID, this was not normal. And it's changing global dynamics in some unexpected ways as well.
Yeah. Kaihan, can you provide some examples of how these technologies are affecting consumer behavior and societal expectations?
I mean, yeah, we want to appreciate that consumers are not very historically good at saying what they want. It is the innovator that creates something, and then consumers say, oh, I didn't know that existed, and now I want it. Steve Jobs was apparently famous for being able to see the possibilities that consumers. So as we start enabling greater customization, consumers are starting to say, wait a second, I'm interested in that. I was in China last month, and I was visiting a washing machine factory, and you saw it was automated. You saw parts coming down from ceilings and in elevators and then getting assembled. And there was a big screen that was tracking the orders. But when I peered at the orders were not for GE appliances or for Best Buy. They were for Deepak in Mumbai. They were for Rob in New Jersey, right? These were actually individually ordered for humans, right? So we're even seeing in kind of the old appliance world this ability to manufacture for specific people. And that is starting to become the expected norm. And it's been that way sort of with digital things. But then from digital things to digital components of physical things, like your car, you can then personalize the appearance on the screen and how fast it accelerates and things like that through digital components, but now even physical products. And so especially the next generation of consumers are expecting this type of personalization. I'm here at a cruise line where I was working this morning, for at the corporate headquarters, and that's a lot of what the conversation is about too. Is this next generation of cruise people? They want personalized experience. They don't want to just be hoarded onto a ship and have the same experience as everyone else. So we are seeing it across every segment, this growth and expectation of and willingness to pay for personalized experiences.
Yeah, Deepak, to build on, by the way, Kaihan, I always love Kaihan's example about the washing machine factory. I think you sent something.
We would love to hear from you, Kaihan.
I think it was a week ago or something you posted about it. And that's exciting because, I mean, it doesn't get more old school than a washing machine.
Yeah, right.
And yet that is becoming customized. So Deepak, roll the tape out 10 years. Where every industry is going, and the high level punchline that Kaihan and I use is proximity is anything, anywhere, anytime. So you asked, how does this change daily life? How does this change the way we interact, the way we live? Anything, anywhere, anytime. And again, we're not proposing this as nirvana. I mean, there are going to be lots of problems. Human beings have shown that we're not very good at making decisions faced with abundance. But this is where every industry is going.
And I think there's another element that maybe at least makes me feel kind of more hopeful, is that we are not going to see humans making queries for things that they want. It is to customize a washing machine is really a pain in the butt. I don't want to have to think about it. But humans become digital customers, digital entities, as IoT devices come down in cost, and we are going to have sensory input for how fast people accelerate in their cars, what time they wake up in the morning, and it will start sensing what people want. You know, they don't like bending down. This human is bending down a lot for opening a refrigerator or something, and so it will give feedback to the machine, if you will, to design a product that doesn't require them to do that. So it will become reactive to human behaviors, and in that way, I mean, hopefully, it will go to the benefit of humans. Let's say. I'm not sure if I'm articulating that well, but it won't be through queries, I don't think.
So my next question is for both of you. Professor Robert and Kaihan, what future trends do you anticipate in the realm of just-in-time innovations, and how might these technologies evolve over the next decade?
Well, I mean, I'll start. In the book, Kaihan and I break this. We look at aspects of life or arenas of life. So how we work, how we eat, how we create and produce, how we prevent and cure, how we power, and how we defend. And then in the last chapter, we look at virtual reality and space, because those are the two horizons of the 21st century. Humans have never really been in any of those places, and we are definitely going there this century. Now, in each of these spaces, proximity rolls out in different ways. And one of the things that we've done in the book is at the opening of each How We chapter, we have a series of punchlines. So observations, quotations from the chapter that give you the essence of how proximity rolls out in each of these very different environments. So I'll give you one example. Probably my second favorite chapter in the book, and that's about how we prevent and cure. My father died at 63 unexpectedly of an aortal aneurysm. He had just had a completely clear physical checkup at the doctor's office. Everything, he felt great, and two months later, he had passed away. And I like to think going forward, that sort of scenario will eventually go away or come close to it. Why is that? Because as we have more and more mechanisms to monitor, like my Garmin, for instance, monitor all physical aspects of our bodies. And it's still rudimentary today, but imagine where we'll be in 5 years or 10 years. When you've got something monitoring everything going on in your body all the time, it disappears into your daily life, finding weak signals. And in the background, an AI system is analyzing those signals. And then you get an email. It says, hey, Deepak, you need to go see your doctor. There might be a problem. And you contact your doctor, and your doctor says, hey, you know what, Deepak? It looks like you've got stage 0 pancreatic cancer. Not a big deal. We can treat that. Super easy. Let's do this. Now, compare that, Deepak, with today, where you wait until you're doubled over in pain. You go to the doctor runs some tests and says, hey, you know, I'm really sorry, you've got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We can't do anything about it. And so the way Kaihan and I summarize this trend in healthcare, which is going to happen, this is not a recommendation, this is happening and going to happen faster, is that proximity compels healthcare from curing things to preventing things. It compels healthcare from curing things to preventing things. For thousands of years, we've been trying to get people to eat better and exercise, and that hasn't worked very well. But proximity will make it so much more efficient, so much cheaper, so much more effective. We'll live better lives. That economic systems will drive healthcare further and further toward prevention, as opposed to having to worry about curing potentially uncurable things. So this is how we look at various realms of life, and it looks different in work than it does in food, than it does in energy, for instance.
Yeah. Kaihan, you would like to add?
Yeah, no, and you see that these different arenas of life then build on each other. For example, distributed, or I would now say proximate energy, producing energy in proximity to where it's needed, that powers all these proximate solutions. It powers the very small medical lab that is in someone's house, monitoring and helping them stay healthy, right? So they all kind of build on each other. I'd also say what we're also starting to see is that the value chain is getting further digitized. So the washing machine drum manufacturer now is getting in the game, and then there will be a customized drum that's made. And then the people that make the metal that go in the drum, that starts getting digitized. And so you see this whole supply chain, as it plugs in, will start becoming this reactive system to needs and bring everything into proximity.
Yeah, and Deepak, what Kaihan just articulated is one of the pillars of proximity strategy. So if you want to figure out how to create and implement proximity, a leading proximity strategy, one of the things you need to do is think about awareness and data across entire ecosystems, not just from your suppliers to your customers, but across the entire value creation ecosystem. And the more you have breadth and depth of detail about what's going on, what the needs might be, et cetera, the more competitive, the more effective you can be at serving the needs of the end customer.
Very insightful. Professor Robert, can you share some real-world examples or case studies where just-in-time innovations have led to significant business or societal transformations?
Well, sure. I mean, I'll ask Kaihan to follow up with a favorite example as well. But I mean, I'll start with an obvious one that's right in front of us, and that's Amazon. And in the book, we have tons of examples of startups, of mid-sized companies that are in growth phase. So there are tons of examples. But one I love is Amazon. They've been doing this since day one. Now, Jeff Bezos did not call it proximity, but he said from day one, I want to build a business and an infrastructure and a platform to be able to be faster, better, cheaper to any customer, whatever they want on their terms. And he's been beating that drum since the very first day. when he started selling books, and has expanded into basically selling the universe. So I remember back in 2013, Amazon announced their first pilots of drone-based delivery. Now, that was 11 years ago, Deepak. And when they first announced they were experimenting with drones for delivery, a lot of people thought it was kind of a joke. In fact, if you watch late night talk shows, comedians were making jokes about drone delivery. It turns out that Amazon wasn't joking. And today, they just last month, they received approval from the FAA here in the United States for specific drone delivery corridors. But let's take it to another level, Deepak. Developing countries, developing markets can use proximity principles and technologies to leapfrog the developed world. So early this year, I took the World Innovation Network, a group of innovation leaders I have from around the world. Kaihan's part of that. And I took a small group to Rwanda. And Rwanda, of course, is a small country in Eastern Africa, 30 years after a genocide. I mean, heaven forbid. Yet they are the most successful country in Africa right now. And imagine that. So we wanted to go and see what was going on. And I got to tell you, Deepak, there was proximity around every corner. I'll give you one example. Like all developing countries, they said, we have to get better at delivering medical supplies, blood, et cetera, vaccines, whatever it is, all around the country. And the traditional answer would have been, gee, let's get a bunch of money from the World Bank. Let's build a bunch of roads. Let's improve our infrastructure. That's all good stuff. But they said, we can't wait for that. You know what we're going to do? We're going to use drones. And we're going to get stuff where it needs to be within a matter of hours. And we're going to do it now. And they are. They're delivering medical supplies, blood, et cetera, all over the country in a matter of hours using drones. And that's just the beginning.
Yeah. So my last question to Professor Robert and Kaihan. What advice would you give to business leaders and innovators looking to capitalize in just-in-time breakthroughs? And how can they effectively integrate these innovations in their strategies and operations?
Well, we found that
you've done a lot of workshops about this.
Yeah. And in those workshops, I think it's really helpful to start with this concept that we call P = 0. Imagine what P = 0 looks like in your industry. The moment that demand appears, you not only deliver the solution to that demand, but you actually create it. Creating is the combining of things, right? So those things are not combined until that moment. Then you work that through and you see that along the entire supply chain, and we think that the supply chain metaphor is going to disentangle and become more like an ecosystem, but you still can use the supply chain metaphor and just say, if I need to sense it immediately, what has to change? If I need to deliver it, if I need to combine it, if I need to manufacture the parts, if I need to get the source it, if I need to grow it across that supply chain, everything has to happen at that moment. That then leads to a bunch of needs that need to be solved, or blockages that need to be solved that are kind of hindering P = 0. Then you can look through the technologies that are available, and proximate technologies include things like AI and robotics and 3D printing and digital sensing and a whole bunch of other technologies. And you can just see where can we apply these technologies, or they can also be trends, I would say as well, to solve those blockages. Then you could kind of prioritize them. And often you find that there's just one thing that is actually not that difficult to pursue. That's just something that the industry has been doing for a long time, that you could start exploring making more proximate. And know that just a little step in proximity over your competition can reap enormous benefits. As Rob talked about with Amazon just gets it to you in the United States one day earlier, and that was enough for them to become the largest retailer in the country.
Hey, Kaihan, could you share, because you brought this example to us about Domino's Pizza. I love that example because everybody loves pizza. And if you don't, you really need to seek some therapy. So everybody loves pizza. And we all know that pizza delivery companies want to do it fast. But Domino's has done it better than everybody else. Their financial returns to public market investors have blown away Google for periods of time. And there was something unexpected about the kind of proximity they provided customers. Tell us a little bit about that Domino's example.
Yeah, it started first when they just tried to digitize their production. So in the store, they wanted to monitor how long did it take something to bake, how long QA took, what stages it was. So then it had this digital information. They realized that when you buy pizza, you buy it for a number of reasons. And there's some of those things are delivered physically, the taste, the heat, for example, but also the knowledge of where my pizza is, how it's being made, what stage is in. That is also a piece of value that can be delivered digitally. So they took their back-end technology and information, and they basically converted it into an app so that when you order it, you can track where the pizza is. And so you start getting the feedback of the part of the experience of getting the pizza. Even though you don't have it physically, you start getting part of that value proposition earlier. And that was enough for them to disrupt their direct competitors. And as Rob said, during the period that we studied them, even exceed the returns, stock returns of Google.
Yeah, and it provided this transparency to consumers we'd never had before. And that's a different value proposition than any other pizza company was paying attention to. So proximity offers so many more ways to add value. You can't just look at what you're currently doing. Deepak, we have tons of examples in the book. We encourage people to, and I really encourage people not just to read their chapter, the one that's related to their job or their industry. I really encourage them to read all of the How We chapters, because you can learn things from other industries and other contexts. And one of the best ways to innovate is something I call transfer and translate. So find something that somebody did somewhere else in a different geography or a different industry, a different technology set, something somebody did that worked, they're making money, they're successful, and then say, what is the essence of that I can transfer and translate into my market for my customers? Because when you find those, they've already done a lot of experimenting for you. You don't have to do it. And you've got data that show that somebody's already making money doing this. So it makes it a little bit of an easier case to make. So really pleased to have this conversation. And we'd also say, if any of your listeners would like to reach out, I'm always on LinkedIn. I know Kaihan uses LinkedIn as well. Just please mention that we met on Business Talk, because as you know, I can't see their picture anywhere here. I don't know who's listening, but please feel free to reach out.
Yeah. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our distinguished guest, Professor Robert and Kaihan, for their insightful discussion on proximity, how coming breakthroughs in just-in-time transform business, society, and daily life. The future is filled with opportunities, and with an open mind, we can embrace and shape it. Thank you so much for joining with us today. Thank you, Professor Robert and Kaihan.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Deepak.